Hey, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Trend Report. I'm glad you're here today for what I know is going to be another fun and interesting conversation. This time with someone I've had the opportunity to work with for many years in some past lives. I'm actually happy to welcome LeAnn Pashina to the podcast today. Hey, LeAnn, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, Sid. I know it's so much fun to stay connected, isn't it?
Isn't it? I had recorded several podcasts over the last couple of months where the theme and some of the things we talked about were all about relationships and how, when you think about what we really like about this industry and what we enjoy most about it is the connections we make and the relationships we're able to build over the course of time. It's a lot of fun. And I think it really does make our industry very unique.
Yeah, and I can't speak to if we're so unique because I really only been in this industry. Although I would say, I have had brief time in some other industries, and you're right. This one, for most people, they get it that it's all about the relationships and how strong that can be and how helpful.
Yeah, it can be very powerful, whether you're trying to change jobs or you got laid off and looking for a new career, or you're looking for a referral or, something. And there's lots of power to relationships, but I'm sure we'll talk about that later in the episode. Let's get on to introducing yourself. I don't want to talk for all this time and nobody know who you are. So again, welcome to the show. Please take a minute and tell our audience who you are and what you do.
Yeah. So my name's LeAnn Pashina, and right now I'm in Austin, Texas, although I've been in a few different markets. And the company that I founded about 5 years ago is Creatively Communicate. Because in my sales career, Sid, what I always learned, and I'm sure you've had it too, where you've gone to all these different sales trainings and they're all great. Although what I learned in my career kind of by happen chance is that the better I got at my communication skills. So I was really heavy into Toastmasters, and I started to get into the public speaking, but I realized that my communication skills, the stronger they got, my sales followed. And as we've learned all this through trial and error in sales and how you present and communicate with others, and it's something that's really not taught. And it's a soft skill that the better you are presenting and communicating, it can increase your earning potential by like up to 50%. And I don't know about you, but I wasn't taught any of this in school. I had to learn hard knocks and just kind of went out and invested in myself. So that's what I'll do now with our company, is that we teach salespeople how to be better communicators, better presenters. And in return, they'll sell more, make more money, which is kind of why we all go into sales for the most part, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're a salesperson, there's certainly a financial drive that you have. But being a salesperson has a risk and a reward. Especially if you have a component of your income that is commission-based, it can be a little bit of feast or famine, but most salespeople do have a high drive to make money. There's absolutely no doubt.
Yeah. And it's because I started as an interior designer in our industry and then went into sales. And that was a difficult transition because the majority of times in our industry, I don't know why furniture dealers just in general don't really train people. So I decided to invest in myself. But I didn't know this sales stuff. I approached it more like a designer, which isn't the best approach, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Listen, I actually agree with you. Very unfortunately, in our industry, outside of training for product, processes, and the people that work there, we don't really do any training in our industry. We don't offer really a systematic sales training. We don't offer any other type of professional development training. And it's very unfortunate, which is why people like you and I and others are doing what we're doing in order to help our community grow by offering different types of training and programs to enhance the person. But one of the things that I think that you said that was so important is invest in yourself.
Yes.
Because if you wait for other people to invest in you, you're going to be waiting a long time. And I do believe, LeAnn, at the end of the day, it's really your responsibility to invest in yourself. Not somebody else.
It is. And in sales, I've been on straight commission now for, I was on commission for a lot of years, and a lot of salespeople don't look at themselves that way. And yet we all are. Even if you get a base salary, if you're not out there selling, hey, your job is not going to be there forever. So when you start to think of this straight commission and you're building up your own clientele and it's all up to you, then you do want to invest in yourself. And it pays back like twofold, at least. I'm sure you'd probably agree, Sid, that the more you invest in yourself, the personal development, becoming a better you, becoming a better salesperson, because our industry, they're all about teaching you about the products, right? Which
Product and
is
process.
good. We need to know, but just because this chair has all this ergonomics, why does the client care? It's all about what the client wants. And that isn't our terminology. And yet it's all, okay, that's great, but what's in it for me?
Yeah, we could stay right here on this topic. Sorry, guys. We could stay right here on this topic for a really long time. But LeAnn, I'm curious. When you think about investing in yourself, what are 3 areas, if you will, that you invest in yourself? What do you do?
Mm. Well, early on, it was, I would say generally communication, but it's public speaking skills. So even as a designer, designers don't want to think of themselves as salespeople, right? They're scared. It's like a salesperson. And I have to say, when I first became a salesperson, is before I'd walk around and go, I'm a designer, woo-hoo. And then as a salesperson, you kind of go, yeah, I'm in sales. You'd be ashamed of it.
Mhm.
And first understanding what sales is, because if every salesperson stopped for just one day, the entire economy would fall apart, right? Because nothing happens until a sale is made.
That's right.
You can't serve someone until you sell someone. And so it's part of it is a big part is your mindset. So working on, what is it that I believe? So the whole mindset approach, whether it's how you look at money, how you look at what you can achieve.
Yep.
So understanding mindset is really big.
Okay.
Understanding the sales process. And then I would say I'm always studying on how to be a better communicator, better presenter. And yes, I can speak on stage, but if you have these same skills, you don't have to speak to 100 people or 1,000 people. Speaking like you and me, I'm doing a presentation in essence.
Yep.
And the better my communication skills are, the better I'll come across on camera.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love that you focus on mindset because it is so important. And, the journey of an entrepreneur is not a flat paved road that goes straight up, is it? It is like a crazy road full of major highs and major lows, windy, curvy, twisty, bumpy, rocky, you name it, it is. But, understanding the power of controlling your mind and affirming yourself and, really shifting your mindset, it was only till just a couple of years ago that I actually really learned how you could do it and the power of doing it. And I think back in my career when bad things happened or when I got into an argument with one of my bosses or with a client, I mean, your mind shifted completely. And I didn't really understand professional development or personal development until I left corporate America because it was never put in front of me. It was never said, hey, here's a course or a training that we've got about, mindset, go to it. That never happened. And it was only after I left the corporate world that I discovered this world of professional development. And I'll say it quietly, I became a junkie. So I can't get enough. I mean, I read people that follow me a lot. A lot of the listeners know this. People that follow my column that I write for the Business Furniture know this. But I read constantly and I have a stack of books that are always up. So my rule of thumb is 10 to 30 minutes a day. I read. I will also, if it's a really important book, I will read and listen at the same time. My goal is 13 books in a year. So that's my goal. And we're going to talk about books again in a minute. And then I listen to podcasts like crazy. In addition to being a podcaster, I listen to podcasts. And yes, I listen to my own for audio quality content. I'm listening to myself, unfortunately.
Have you gotten over you hate hearing your own voice? Have you finally gotten over that?
The minute that I started doing podcasts, that had to go out the window. So it had to go. But I've had a couple of guests on recently that have refused to listen to it. I'm like, come on. And it's like, I can't listen to myself talk. And I went, well, I have no choice because I have to listen to it. I need to make sure it's a good show and lots of reasons why I listen to it. But my love for podcasting and listening to podcasts, and I listen to podcasts that are things that are important to me. So I listen to podcasts on podcasting. I listen to things about coaching, about leadership, about entrepreneurship. So I listen to things that are important to me and obviously about our industry. But the love of listening is what gave me the love for being a podcaster. And so I'm a huge junkie. So reading, podcasting are two things that I do almost daily in order to further my and focus on me and invest in me, in addition to occasionally enrolling in courses and programs and stuff.
Well, I remember, so Tom Hopkins isn't big like he was way back when I started. Yeah, for our younger audience. So back in the 80s, Tom Collins was one of the top sales trainers. And I remember he came and I did this 3-day boot camp and went into sales. And after that, I realized, what it's all about. And of course, with most sales trainings, they teach you mindset. But I remember that first one. And then from there, I started listening to Jim Rohn and Brian Tracy. And somewhere along the line, how they said, turn your car into a university. So this is when there was still cassette tapes, all these cassette tapes. And I just kept listening to it. And then all of a sudden, one day I realized, I don't know, it was a couple years into it. All of a sudden, this stuff just started spewing out of my mouth. And I kind of through osmosis, like, wow, this stuff really does work.
It works. It works.
But we're in that instant society, though. You know, you want to read a book and go, okay, I got it. You go out and as we know, it's the repetition, and it's sometimes it is through trial and error, and it's how you make it your own as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So key, though.
It is so important to invest in yourself. And I would say anybody listening to this, if you're not doing a lot of professional development, you don't have to do everything at one time. Just take it in small bites.
Yeah.
Listening to this podcast is a form of professional development. Reading a book is. There's so many things that you could do. And I'm also a sucker for a good course. I have signed up for so many different things, and I do just like you, LeAnn. I catch myself saying things and I'm like, I learned that in this program that I went through, or I learned that in this program that I went through. So it's really amazing.
It is kind of fun to read all these different gurus. There's so many books. Sometimes it's hard to select. And a lot of it, maybe we've heard before, but I realized that even the different events and seminars I go to, if I walk away and I can implement 2 or 3 things, it was well worth, whether it's a day, 2 days, 3 days, because it's that continuous improvement.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. One step forward each and every day.
Yes.
Okay, so this is another topic we could spend the entire podcast talking about, but I don't want to do that for our listeners' sake. But LeAnn, I would really curious as to what was the catalyst for you starting Creatively Communicate? What was like the thing that said, I need to start this business?
Yeah, I just kept looking around and watching different salespeople, and especially you go to these network events and these network salespeople would stand up, and you're just thinking, wow, they don't, first of all, this commercial, you're like, what did they say? Maybe you couldn't hear them. They sucked, right? Yeah. Here they are. They may be passionate about what they do, but they just kind of regurgitate all these facts all over you. And I don't get what they do. And I wonder, are they really successful? And yet I could see that they had either a good product or a good service. They were good people. They just didn't know how to take their information and present it in a way so that they could actually intrigue someone, get that prospect in front of them and present. And then have you ever had it where, especially some of these home sales people, they're learning, and that they memorize this company presentation and they just give it, and yet they don't hear, or they're not able to pause and pay attention to my body language or what I'm saying. And they just miss it. And, I know they've invested a lot in it, but they don't understand the communication skill. And I started to learn that through trial and error. And I thought, well, if I have 30 plus years of experience and I can take any salesperson and narrow that down to say even 10 years, what would that do to you? If I knew what I knew now 20 years ago, I probably wouldn't be on the podcast right here. She said I'd be somewhere on the beach or something.
On an island with a Mai Tai, right?
Yes.
Relaxing, enjoying in a hammock, reading a book. So that's great. So LeAnn, through this journey, you created this company, you help people communicate better, but you've also written a couple of books. So tell us about the books that you've written, because I'm working on a couple myself. So I'm really interested in, like, how did you get started in writing a book?
Yeah, that's something, Sid, I never figured it. I never had this, what are they called? Bucket list. I'm going to write a book. That was never on my list. Although I was teaching this one course, it's how to build, deliver your perfect presentation. And I found this nugget in one of the research about where you sit in regard to a sales presentation.
Right.
I'm like, this stuff's pretty good. And then a friend who was helping me edit the book said, you need to create a product just around this. And so I started doing more research, and the book that I came up with is called Sit Your Way to Success: From Sales Meetings to Dinner Parties, Where You Sit Matters. And it's, in a nutshell, it's taking the psychology of where people sit, whether it is a conference meeting, a sales meeting, a large event, and understanding that and then taking that and using it to help you strategize whatever your goal is. If it's a sales meeting and you want to build rapport with the client, what's the best way to do it? Where to sit? Because Sid, did you know that there's a higher percentage of closing sales whether you sit to the right or the left of your prospect?
Okay, so actually, yes, I do, because I heard you give this training for a client, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it out loud. LeAnn was a subject matter expert for Indiana University, and which is our sponsor. And I happened to be able to sit in and watch LeAnn give this presentation and at IU, and I was fascinated with all of the stats and information. And I remember talking to somebody later, like, there's a science behind where you sit. And believe it or not, I got so much takeaway from that. I was coaching a leader a couple of weeks ago, and we were working on leadership skill and style and things of that nature. We were talking about team meetings and in conference rooms. And I was encouraging him to think about empowering his people and giving them the challenge, which I talk about a lot as well, and letting them solve the problem. And I encouraged him to sit in the middle of the table.
Oh, did you read the book too, or just remember the presentation?
No, I didn't read the book. I remember the training was so good. I was so fascinated with the training that I said you should sit at the middle of the table rather than the head of the table, because it sends a different message to your people. And so I haven't gotten any reports back yet with how it worked yet, but I'm anxious to talk to him in our next session to find out how it worked.
Yeah,
but
it changes the dynamics.
Yes.
It's really fun.
So, I mean, an old guy like me got a lot of information out of your Sit Your Way to Success training. I know it's all in the book as well, but I want you to answer the question. Sitting to the left or to the right of the client gives you a greater probability of closing the sale.
So it's sitting to the left of your prospect. Most everyone thinks they want to sit to the right, and sitting to the left may be a little odd. The reason why is, when you understand this, is when you're sitting to the left, I'm now talking into your right brain, which is the emotional hemisphere, the emotional side of the brain. And we all know we make buying decisions emotionally, back them up logically. So that's why there is science behind it. And on the statistics, they've shown that you actually do that. What you'll find, though, again, it's building that rapport, because the better communicator you are, you build that rapport quicker, you build trust, and no one's going to buy from you. Rarely will anyone buy from you if they don't trust you. So it's having that communication style and understanding their personality too, and how to build that is ideal.
All right, guys, hit the back button a couple of times and go back and listen to what LeAnn just said again. It is not intuitive to sit on the left-hand side. It's counterintuitive.
Yes.
But you sit on the left-hand side because you're talking into the person's right brain, because buying decisions are emotional decisions, and the right brain is the emotional side of the brain. I mean,
and they can grab the book. It's interesting, like we say, writing the book. So my mind, I'm like, let me just get the info, go direct. So I just wrote it to think that, like typical salespeople, oh, just give me a nugget. So you want to pick up the book and read something and go. And that's the way I wrote it. So I don't have a ton of stories in it. So now I'm thinking I should come up with the second version of all these stories of, okay, I sat here and it went well. I sat here and it didn't. And so I tried it this way. So I think what I'm going to do is run a contest and get a bunch of people's stories. So if you guys have stories, you have to reach out to me. I would love that. It can be my next book, right?
That's a great idea, LeAnn. I love it. I love it.
You like that?
So we're going to drop the link to the book in the show notes for you guys to check it out. And it is I mean, I haven't read it. I participated in the training, and the training is really, really good. And the book, if the book is half as good as the training was, you got to buy the book, because it was so powerful. And it was so much fun. I mean, it was just like, it was enlightening to hear, because again, that's a form of professional development and not anything I had ever thought of. I had never crossed my mind that there was a psychology to where you sat at a table?
Well, we're not taught about it. And of course, I go into table shapes and how you can use table shapes to your advantage or disadvantage.
Mm-hmm.
And so I go into all that. It's fun stuff. And by the way, for those of you who are like, I'm not a reader, I want to listen to audio, it's an audio too. And it's actually everywhere. And if you don't want to buy the book, just go to your library, because I had it so that it's readily available. So any major retailer, but it's just one of those easy ones. And I know you'll pick up a couple nuggets. And I would just say, if you're listening now going, really sitting to the left, and I'll just tell you, try it. Mm-hmm. And part of it is, if you sit to the left of your client and you're going to have a higher closing ratio, sales are tricky enough. Why wouldn't you just do it?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because it's backed by science, right? It's backed by information and research that says that it works. So LeAnn, you've written a couple of books. You do some public speaking, you do some training. What do you actually really do inside of Creatively Communicate?
Well, a lot of it, we start with your introduction commercial.
Okay.
Most people, they don't know, they think, elevator pitch.
Yes.
And it's been for years, we lovingly call it the elevator pitch. And I'm working to rename it your introduction commercial. Because first, when you hear pitch, what do you hear? Yeah, I'm going to pitch you. I'm going to sell you in 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. So most of us go out there and stumble. And it's like, if I have the magical words and deliver in 30 seconds, you're going to buy from me, Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Okay. So I got a question. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So I don't teach this, but I do talk to people about this. You walk into a networking event, or now we've been some networking events. Obviously we've been in person, some not. A lot of things have been happening online, but you go into you meet somebody and they say, hey, Sid, what is it that you do? I'm generalizing, so don't anybody get mad, but I'm generalizing. But most people in our industry will say, I sell office furniture.
Yep. Yeah.
How would you respond to that question when you are an active seller, that what it is that you do? And when somebody says, hey, LeAnn, what is it you do?
If I was in the office furniture industry, you mean?
Yeah. If you were a seller in the office furniture industry, what would you, because I know what I would say, but what would you say? I'm putting LeAnn on the spot, guys. So we're going to see.
Well, and part of it is, first of all, when you know all your sound bites, you know that you can twist and turn according to your audience.
Yep.
So if you walk into, it might be one that's more of all the decision makers, or it may be people that you can network with and add to your community and get leads that way. So a lot of it will depend. I may change it up a little bit.
Yeah.
But, you think of what does your client want to hear? So if it's a general one, I may say, a lot of clients, they want an interior that's functional, that looks great, and they just don't know where to start. Mm-hmm. And what I do is come in and I consult with them and figure it out, what is it they need? Instead of, I want that chair, I always ask, why do you want that chair? What is it? Let's look at what your needs are, because there's so many products out there. And then I have the knowledge to be able to look at the whole industry and figure out what's going to be best for you. I always like to tell my clients, I give them their biggest bang for their buck, because I want to make sure they're happy, because I'm not out there for the one-hit wonder. Mm-hmm. I'm there for the long haul. Yeah.
The relationship that will take you from beginning to end for many years. So if I were to meet somebody completely blind that I'd never met before let's say I'm at an in-person networking event hosted by some company and there's a bunch of people there, right? I would say, when people ask me what it is that I do, I would respond with something along the lines of, I help companies create dynamic spaces that improve employee engagement and overall health and well-being while increasing productivity and reducing company expense.
Yeah, and that's a good answer. Sometimes though, we get because that would look really good in print.
Yeah, it would. Yeah. Along with my picture,
and then some are like,
along with my picture right beside
yes,
it.
Yes, your picture right beside it. Yes. And this is what we do. And I find the more, like, if you could even tell a story, I just recently helped ABC move, and they needed to move, and they really should have hired a full designer. And yet they didn't have that money to do that. And I came in, we took inventory of what they had, we reconfigured it, we moved them. In fact, I had to take five of the locations into one, streamlined it. I project management, I designed it, worked with them all along the way. And, now they're happy. They can continue to add on if they need to. That's the type of client that's a really good referral for me. So Sid, if you run across someone that is moving, that would be a great referral.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And see, I think the thing about a pitch or an intro is you want it to feel natural and normal. You don't want it to feel creepy.
Right.
And secondly, you want it to leave with intrigue.
Hmm.
You want the person that you're talking to say, well, tell me more. Like, what does that
That's what it's
mean?
about. I tell
Yes.
people now, think of your favorite commercial, and I can always use Apple. Everyone's seen an Apple commercial, but
Yep.
remember when they first started MP3, they weren't on there. This MP3 can do this. Look at the size. They sold the lifestyle. And
Mhm.
when you finish, you're like, okay, I want that. I want music in my pocket.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I want to be able to work all day where my back doesn't hurt. You could even say, do you and your employees go home where like your shoulders hurt or whatever? A lot of it is what the furniture you're using or how you're sitting. And I
Mhm.
have a lot of fun to be able to come into any office and show them how they can either use their chair better and sit properly,
Yeah.
or maybe we just need to tweak some things. It
Yeah,
doesn't mean you have to do a big overhaul, right?
absolutely. All right. So you got the book, you help with communication, you teach people about how to do their introduction better, and you have trainings. I've watched you do them. So you have trainings and programs that you do. What are some of the things that you focus on inside those programs?
It's a process too. So once we get your elevator pitch down,
Mhm.
your commercial, and then a big part of that is your presentation skills and your body
Yep.
language. And we can start to go through some basic body language skills and how to use these hand gestures.
Mhm.
And you had mentioned we were talking about podcast and voice. So I also went through some training and I'm a voiceover artist. So understanding how to use this tool we have, some people just don't understand it. So knowing how to use it on the phone, even a lot of people are now afraid to pick up the phone, but the phone is another great tool. But understanding this voice and how to create a voice that really works for you and resonates.
Mhm.
Because I grew up in Minnesota, and Minnesotans often talk in their nasals, so they're more up here. And this is the way I used to sound. And when I'd get excited, Sid, I just would stand up here and you're like, oh my God, I can't listen to her for that long.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and fortunately, someone pointed out to me. So I started up here and then just brought my voice down. And now it's more of a resonant voice. And it's more like the middle and chest voice. And just the words you use, because when we sound more professional, people trust us faster
Yep.
and they respect us. And therefore, again, you're going to close the sale faster because that relationship, instead of taking 2 and 3 calls, if you can do that in the first call, now you've created that trust.
Mhm.
And then and then it's just easy from there for the most part.
Okay. So basically, the way I'm going to reframe this is you help take a holistic approach with practical tips and guidance to help people communicate better in a variety of ways throughout their life or their business, whether that's presentation, voice, body language. You help them be better at where they sit is another example. You help
Yep.
them be better at what they do so they can actually close more business, increase their revenue, make more money for them and for their business. And oh, by the way, you've been in our industry a really long time and you know exactly what every seller and every designer at a dealership goes through on a daily basis because you've walked that path.
Yeah. In fact, when I was the designer and I went with sales, I would our top salespeople in this one dealership, and I would just observe them and mentor them and learn. And what I found was when the two of us went in there, I knew my industry or my skill set, and so I had a good rapport with the client talking design, and then let them take over in sales. And the reason I bring it up is when you can team sell, and for you new designers out there, it's especially, learn from your salespeople, be a team. And we would go out there and we presented well, because
Mhm.
I started to learn early on, well, if I need to interact with people, I better develop some good people skills
Mhm.
and have that. And, furniture is furniture. It can still be fun. And so
Mhm.
when you go out, the client's having fun, they're like, hey, these people know what they're talking about. It makes such a difference. So it's the people skills, it's communication skills. And it's not that people have to make this 180-degree turn and learn all these skills. You're probably good at what you're doing now. You just want to continue to increase. And if you can observe your prospect and identify different things they're doing in body language, in their voice,
Mhm.
and just in their rapport, then you can react to that. Because every presentation should always be about your prospect, not about me.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I think too much of what we do in presentations is about me and the products that I sell and how great that we are. So I love that. I know every situation is different, guys. I know sometimes you got to do presentations on product because that's what you get asked for, but focusing on the needs of the client, understanding the client. So I feel like that the last few episodes, LeAnn, I've been on this kind of roll about these very topics. We had Alexandra Stefos from the Design Pop come in and talk about the designer and supporting the designer and bringing the designer into the sales process sooner. That is a very, very powerful thing to do. So it's really, really great information. And I love just how simple that you said team selling
Mm-hmm.
can be a really, really good thing in leveraging the knowledge of both people in the process in order to take the sale further down the road and get to where you want to be, which is closing the sale.
Yeah.
So LeAnn, tell me as we start to wrap up here, what else are you cooking up? Because I can imagine you've got some other things going on. So tell me.
Well, so my 29 Seconds to Greatness workshop. And it's funny because that book I put on the shelf and that was going to come out before Your Situated Success. So I will be starting that and probably the first part of next year, that book will be
All right,
out.
I'll just say that again. Say the name of the title again.
29 Seconds to Greatness.
Okay.
Which
Coming
is
out the
that
first of
introduction
2022?
commercial. I'm sorry?
Coming out the beginning of 2022?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because I've been giving the workshop a couple of times, wanted to test it and then make sure I include the right information. And so it'll be a book. Right now it's a workshop where we really work on that intro commercial. And where I'm a little different, if you've picked up any of those on elevator pitch, they just talk about what to say. And I always start my workshops with, you think you're going to have these magical words and your world is going to turn upside down with sales. And if you have the magical words and you deliver them flat, it doesn't matter. So it's this whole package and understanding that what are your sound bites? What is it that you want to say? And then how you say it. In fact, my tagline, creatively communicate, it's how you say it because it's so important. Well, Sid, I'll tell you this. So there's always two conversations going on in any communication. You have your content or the words that are spoken. And then you have the nonverbal, which includes your body language and your voice. And if the two aren't congruent, we believe the nonverbal every time. If your wife came up to you and said, yes, Sid, I love you. Yeah, it's been a long haul, but I really love you.
It's been 26 years. She says that just like that on a daily basis. So, oh my gosh. It's crazy. Yeah, but the body language is so important. And I had somebody on not too long ago, Max Verkamp, the CEO of Indiana Furniture, was on during one of my CEO chats. And we actually spent quite a bit of time talking about the skill of listening and the power of developing listening skills, and that being able to read nonverbal communication is actually understanding the skill of listening.
Oh, listening is so key.
Mhm.
And it's pausing. And then when you can ask a question in response where that they were listening.
Mhm.
And, to test this out, just start doing it with your friends. Because how many friends do you have that you'll say something, you're like, did he or she even hear me?
Yeah. Oh,
Or
yeah.
or a lot of times, too often we listen to respond instead of listening to understand.
Yeah.
And because we're afraid of the pause, I talk about the power of the pause. It's a great tool and we shouldn't be afraid of it. When we pause, well, then people wonder, what is she going to say next? It gives you time to kind of catch up. And then you find yourself kind of leaning in. What is she going to say next? I want to hear that. So after your client says, this is the way we operate, blah, 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 blah. And then just kind of take that in and pause and then respond with the question. So Sid, what you're telling me is, your accounting department and your IT need to operate this way together or, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
So pause before you just jump right in.
I'm pausing intentionally. Oh my gosh, guys. LeAnn, just so many nuggets of amazing information. I'm so glad we were able to do this and have this conversation. A lot of really, really good insights here. And it's been a great conversation. You got one book out, one book coming, some training programs. LeAnn, if our community would love to get in touch with you, what is the best way for them to do that?
Well, there's a couple things. So I have, I'm always posting videos. I have a YouTube channel, Creatively Communicate. I post them on LinkedIn. So I would say, hey, connect with me on LinkedIn. And I think I'm the only LeAnn Pashina in the world. So I'm pretty easy to find. Well, I guess we'll have in the show notes. So you just look me up and connect with me. And I would love to connect with you and continue to add value. And then, of course, you can go to my website, creativelycommunicate.com. And I'm just LeAnn at creativelycommunicate.com. And, each Tuesday I have an email that goes out. I call it, Tuesday's tip. And it's just a simple tip you can apply in your communication. And it's just a lot of fun. And I've been getting some good response on that too. So
I'm
those are
part of
ways I
that
love to
email.
add value.
I'm part of that email list. So I see those Tuesday emails. when they
Oh,
come
okay,
out.
great.
And then, so we'll drop all that contact information in the show notes, guys. Just a reminder, you know the rules. If you do reach out to LeAnn on LinkedIn, please be sure before hitting that connect button that you hit the add note button. Let her know that you heard her here on the Trend Report. And that's why you're reaching out and connect her, and let her know the value that you found in this conversation today. LeAnn, it's been an absolute pleasure hanging out with you. Thank you so much for coming and sharing all your insights. Great nuggets of gold today. And one last question.
Yes.
Are you going to be at NeoCon by chance?
I'm not planning on it this year. I have a couple other events that are going on, so it's not working out, unfortunately, because it's October, right?
Yes, it is October. Well, let's make a deal. If I come to Austin or you come to Dallas, drinks are on me, okay?
I like that one. You got a deal.
All right, go have a great day. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks, Sid. It's been
I appreciate
great.
you.
All right.